There are a lot of states considering regulations on AI. Put some guardrails up. The House Republicans in D.C. are saying, states, no, you can't do that. We're not going to allow you to do that.
Are you on? Which side are you on?
The thing that we wanted to talk about first today with this bill is something that's really gone significantly overlooked. Like, not very many people have been kind of tuning into this portion of the bill, but Republicans snuck into the bill a preemption on preemption on AI regulations from the states. And so we have been seeing this preemption problem all across the country on the state level, right? We saw this in like 2015 or 2014 or 2016 whenever Birmingham in Alabama raised the minimum wage municipally. They raised the minimum wage to like $10.10 an hour or something like that. And the big government people in Montgomery in the state legislature passed a state law that says municipalities are no longer allowed to raise the minimum wage themselves. We saw this in Texas much more recently, where municipalities were trying to create heat protections for their workers. For folks, within the municipality of Houston, we want to try to protect workers from the heat because, I know that not all of our listeners are in the South. It's hot in Houston. It's very hot. And so, the city council was like, hey, let's protect people from the heat because it's killing people. It's literally actually people are dying. And so we want to protect people from that. And the state legislature passed a bill in Texas that said, no, Houston, Austin, you can't do that. You cannot protect your citizens from the heat. Even if that is obviously something that your citizens would want you to do, you can't do that. We're going to sit here in the state capital of Texas and tell you that you can't do what's right locally. Well, the Republicans are taking this a step further by doing this preemption federally on AI regulations. And the AI problem is really I am not tuned in to the AI stuff, so I frankly don't know exactly what to make of it, just because I'm not so tuned in. But what I hear when I do tune in for a little bit, I'm kind of walking around and I put my ear to the ground on the AI stuff, and I hear so many so many folks who are just apoplectic about like AI is going to destroy the world. We're going to have like a singularity problem and AI is going to take over everything. And it's, this big doom and gloom, huge, or either doom and gloom or like utopia kind of stuff. Like it's going to be a big change one way or another. The AI stuff is, according to its proponents and detractors. And so, rightly, there are a lot of states who are considering regulations on AI, who are, starting to kind of put some guardrails up, right? And so the House Republicans in D.C. are saying, no, states, you can't do that. We're not going to allow you to do that. And it's very concerning, particularly for, creative industries. And so, Adam, I want you to, you're in IATSE, the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees. They have been putting out some communication on this portion of the bill. Specifically, how has the Stagehands Union, and, they represent the kind of below the line crew and film and TV and stuff. What has their message been on this AI preemption from DC?
Right. So, IATSE represents the behind-the-scenes entertainment industry workers, everything from movie and TV to live events, concerts, musicals, trade shows that come through your region. And last week, they put out a really good statement. They actually, talked about 3 U.S. policy developments regarding artificial intelligence. And I'm like you, Jacob. I haven't followed AI super closely. I know as a unionist that we always have to be concerned with new technologies, new automation, possibilities of job loss, right? Because that is one of the biggest concerns that we have out here as union members, is not necessarily the technology itself. I think people make that mistake and think that workers are, Luddites and are scared of the technology. But if you actually dig deeper, even into the Luddite story, you recognize that workers aren't scared of new technologies. Workers are scared of job losses due to new technologies, right? Because we don't own these products. We don't own the robots. We don't own the AI, right? So any productivity gains are not shared with us. It's one thing if AI is adopted in your workplace and now everyone has a little bit easier, go of it. And maybe things are taken off your plate. Maybe you even have less hours you have to work for the same salary, right? Things like that. That's one thing. But there's been a lot of concern about job losses. As you mentioned, in the creative industry, it was a big issue in the writers and actors strikes recently. I guess that was last year or so. So IATSE strongly opposes the proposed ban on state-level AI regulations that is contained in the House Republican budget. It's really, I think you're correct to bring up the state-level issues because it's always ironic when people who claim to be small government do everything but that.
Hey, 5 seconds, just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Right. It is perfectly reasonable that cities, states, counties would want to have some sort of regulations and guardrails around this emerging technology. And, this is clearly, tech billionaire corporations who are trying to prevent that. And so what they're trying to do, and what IATSE says, is that what it's going to do is ultimately transfer sole authority to a historically gridlocked and slow-moving Congress and delete all existing state AI policy to make the Wild West AI landscape even more lawless. And it's not just blue states that have been, passing these regulations. For instance, Tennessee's Elvis Act protects artists from unauthorized AI-generated voice and likeness reproductions, right? New York has an AI Bill of Rights. So this federal preemption actually does threaten jobs. It threatens our working conditions, our pay and benefits. And it's really unfortunate that, the federal government is stepping in to try to block local and state government from taking action. For example, there are areas like California where there's just simply more movie and TV industry. It makes sense that California may have something to say on that, right? And that's not the only AI-related development. Again, from this statement last week, May 14th, they actually commended the U.S. Copyright Office. The U.S. Copyright Office put out a report, Copyright and Artificial Intelligence, Part 3, Generative AI Training. Now, my eyes kind of glazed over when I heard that, or when I read that, but what it ultimately is the government's report on what's developing with AI and, again, setting some guardrails and discussing what some of those guardrails could be. So IATSE actually applauded that report. It seemed to be pretty pro-worker and a little skeptical of, some of the lawlessness and tech billionaire-backed, spread of this. And it also, the interesting thing is, shortly after this report, or around the same time this report was put out, the Trump administration has tried to illegally fire Shira Perlmutter. She is Register of Copyrights and Director of the U.S. Copyright Office, right? Just one day after the release of a report on the use of copyrighted materials to train generative AI models. So she puts out a report that's pretty pro-worker, that is skeptical of the tech billionaire industry here. Next day, she's terminated. And much like the what we believe to be unlawful dismissal of the NLRB chair, Gwen Wilcox, she is not an employee of the legislative branch. I mean, the executive branch. She is an employee of the legislative branch. So, there's a lot of legal questions as to whether or not the Trump administration even has authority to do that. And it's unclear if this firing was in retaliation for the report. It wouldn't surprise us, if it was. We know that Silicon Valley billionaires have a lot of influence right now in politics. And so if the Copyright Office is trying to put up some guardrails with this unrestricted AI use, it would make sense. It would make sense. So I know IOTC is not the only union to be speaking out against this. Several unions have been putting together reports and commissions on AI and trying to study it because it is an emerging technology and it does have the potential. Yeah, if you listen to people, it has the potential to really transform the economy, to transform a lot of things. And so, again, it's very, very disappointing to see that government that is closer to you, state and local government, where you have more influence, where you may actually know the lawmakers or get a chance to know the lawmakers, right? That they are being prohibited from actually having a voice in this, right? And so that threatens us. And frankly, what's happening in Congress with this bill is a threat to all of us. This is just one little aspect to it that is a little bit undercovered, right? A lot of people don't know this, but there are so many bad things that are contained in this bill, from massive cuts to safety benefits, the safety net, like Medicaid. We're talking millions of people losing their health coverage. Attacks on other forms of the safety net, like SNAP, food stamps. Millions of people rely on that to feed their family. And, I'm not exactly sure what preempting state and local government on AI regulations has to do with the budget. But, we wanted to make sure we lifted that out because this is a workers' rights issue. It's something that's going to continue to be more and more in the conversation. It's something we're going to have to deal with in our contract negotiations, regardless of your industry. Some are more impacted than others, obviously. But it's a developing issue. It's something we're going to keep our eye on for sure.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.